All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special Poker News episode. We're going to do a 25th anniversary rewatch of Rounders, and we're going to be watching the movie. You're not going to be able to see it with us unless you get it on your DVD, streaming device, what have you, VHS like Jesse has here.
Oh, yeah.
So fire it up, get ready. We'll do a little countdown, and you press play. You'll get to listen along. You're going to get a lot of great commentary. In 3, 2, 1, let's do this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode of the Poker News. It's not the Poker News podcast per se, but a Poker News show to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Rounders, arguably the greatest poker movie ever made. I am joined here in the studio by my good friend, Jesse Folan, former co-host of the Poker News podcast, now with Poker Royalty.
That's right.
Yep.
I came back.
You did. And
so fast.
We also have senior editor John Sofin.
Good to be here, Chad. I don't know about the arguably part. I mean, it's almost like universally accepted.
That's right. And very excited to have former World Series of Poker media director and noted poker historian, sports bettor. I don't know, Nolan Dalla. I don't know what we should refer to you as.
Just say former XXXXX.
That works.
Well, we're very excited because we know you were with the World Series of Poker at the time that the movie came out. And, you know, we're 25 years removed. And this movie, like John said, it really take the arguably out of it. It's one of the best, if not the best. Yeah, it is the best poker movie. Would you agree? Or do you have, I know you're a big movie cinephile.
I don't think it's the best, but we'll get to the reasons why later.
You don't think it's the best?
Get the hell out of here.
It's not the best.
Can I guess who which Mississippi Grind, maybe?
Oh, come on, John.
Who do you got?
We're going to save it. We've got a 2-hour show.
I can tell you right now, the intro to
We'll go
Rounders,
around. I want to hear everybody else's, but this is not my favorite.
The intro that we just seen, I can tell you, was added to the movie after it was filmed. The original film initially opened with Matt Damon, who plays Mike McDermott, coming down escalators and straight into the casino, this elevator rather. They decided they wanted to show him collecting the actual money. And that's kind of something they added in post, if you will, like a reshoot.
That's fun. I mean, that intro when he's pulling money out of the frame, it's like, hey, so I can hide money in the frame?
Yeah. What I liked about it, too, is they had some poker callbacks, right? They had Doyle Brunson's book, the Silver Edition, which you have, Jesse, I know, on your bookshelf.
Yep.
They had Mike Caro's VHS video.
Yep.
Do you guys remember the first time you watched this movie?
No.
You don't?
No, I watched it way too many times.
Do you?
I do. I watched it in theaters. I'm pretty sure it was in theaters, and I hated it.
Really?
It was because, you got to remember, like, I didn't start playing poker until probably 5 years after this movie came out. I kind of consider it similar to Office Space, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And the reason I say that is because I hated both. They both kind of came out at the same time, and I hated both movies because I didn't really understand them, because I wasn't into poker and I'd never worked behind a cubicle. And so then years later, when I did work behind a cubicle and I started playing poker, now those two are both among my favorite movies.
What about you, Nolan? You were actually in the poker world at the time that this came out, as opposed to the rest of us. Was there a excitement about it? Did people know about it?
Yeah, I'll explain why I think Rounders was the most transformative and maybe most important poker movie ever made. I'll get to that in a moment. I do want to say one thing about the opening,
please,
here that I think is real important. I like that they opened in the apartment and then him walking through this alley and he opens up the door. Does everyone remember what it was like, especially when they were new to the game and you had that adrenaline rush and you're hyperventilate and you're thinking about, I'm getting ready to get in the action? Every poker player has that. It's a rush, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think as long as you have that rush, you're a poker player. When you lose that rush, I think you've got to have that burning desire to get into the game. Yeah. And you see that here in the beginning of the show, of the movie.
Yeah, it's a good way to set the tone for sure. You see here John Turturro, a great actor. One of the things about this movie as a whole, it was a good time for the producers of it because they got all this talent who would go on to find much more critical success than they did at this point in time in 1990, end of 1997 into 1998. You know, Matt Damon was just coming off Good Will Hunting, hadn't won the Oscars or anything yet.
It hadn't even come out yet.
Right.
It was still.
Yeah, so he was still an unknown to a large degree when this movie was filmed.
Yeah. As the main character, how crazy is that?
And Joey Knish here.
Based off of what? Joey Bagels? Was that his name? Yeah. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but there was an there's an actual guy who played the Mayweather, right? The Mayflower Club. That's right. There's an actual guy whose last name was Bagels, and that was his nickname because he would play all night. Then he'd leave the poker room and go drive a bagel route delivering bagels, and so that's who can guaranteed 100%. I'm shocked you guys don't know this already. You guys are experts in your fields? Bullshit. Call bullshit.
I do know that a lot of the characters in the film were based upon real life people, so that tracks. Based upon these the writers David Levine and Brian Koppelman.
Yep.
This little intro here reminds me a lot of like what Mike Sexton used to do for the World Poker Tour, where you have to sum up how the game is played so people can understand what they're watching, but you got to do it in a quick, efficient manner.
I have watched this movie recently with both my daughters and my wife separately, 3 different, each daughter. And I've made them shut up during this part. Like, put your phones down, listen. You have to learn how poker is played. This is such a fun movie.
And then, of course, John Malkovich, who is one of the greatest actors out there, and in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people's, and to have him play Teddy KGB is just incredible. And I was watching this film with the director's commentary, which I got to pick up on a lot. And one of the stories that was told by Matt Damon was that when John Malkovich first sat down and played Teddy KGB, he did so in a very animated, cartoonish kind of way, really over the top. And everybody in the crew and on set were applauding like it was the greatest thing ever, even though he was kind of doing it as a joke. Mm-hmm. And he apparently leaned over to Matt Damon and said, this is a problem when you get too successful, that you don't have people telling you the truth, right? Mm-hmm. He said something along like he just leaned over to Matt Damon and said, "I'm a terrible actor. Sometimes I'm a terrible actor."
Yep. I recently saw this hand recut with like poker graphics, as if it was like a poker broadcast live stream with like the aces and the ace 9. And
yeah, for those who might not be watching along or just listening to this on the podcast edition, we're talking about the big first hand that's shown where Mike McDermott has ace 9 of clubs, and Teddy KGB is ultimately going to have the 2 red aces, and Mike McDermott is going to lose his $30,000, which really sets up the rest of the movie.
I don't want to bring spoilers in yet, but I'm assuming people that are listening to us.
It's been 25 years. Yeah.
But the thing with the Oreo cookies, can you discuss that and what the symbolism here of the tell of the cookies is? Sure.
So Teddy KGB has the Oreos, and a couple times throughout the movie, he'll take the Oreo and turn them, and they split apart. So there's 2 sides, and one side will inevitably have the cream. From what I understand, the tell is when he has a good hand, he eats the cookie. When he doesn't have a good hand, he doesn't eat the cookie.
Oh my gosh, what a tell!
So we'll track it here as we do this watch along, but I'm pretty sure that that's the meaning behind it.
These, of course, are string bets.
And also just calling for time. I've never had to be
he's
whoa,
got the
time.
deck in his hand. The man's the dealer. I mean, no one's going to deal. He's got the cards in his hand.
And I think we've all played hands like this where you think you have the nuts and you're just setting up your opponent and you're almost licking your chops that you're about to win this huge pot, only to have your opponent roll over the one hand that beats you.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. Just wonderful.
It's, yeah. I think going all in here, a little too ambitious. What's going to call you? Something that beats you.
Yeah, but in
the famous
1998,
line,
people weren't.
I don't have spades. Ace is full, Mike. There's hands that beat you. The aces, obviously, is the only one that beats you. He could have ace 9 there.
It's not how poker players were thinking back then.
The other part about this hand right there is Teddy KGB rolls over the aces, so he's got aces full. Mike McDermott hasn't showed his cards, and the bodyguards are already swooping in to collect the chips. I mean, Mike McDermott could have had pocket 9s there and had quad 9s. It wasn't like Teddy KGB had the stone cold nuts.
Well, I mean, it's a little too late now. His cards are in the muck.
And to put all, I mean, that's his entire bankroll, $30,000. He put it all in one game, one buy-in. Could have at least spread it apart, 10,000 here, you lose that bullet, buy again. But that's not the route he went.
Open seat.
That's right. That's right.
Taxi.
Now, Nolan, you've spent many years in the poker industry, both playing and as media director, what have you. I got to imagine at Binion's back in the day, you've seen that look on a lot of players' faces where they just, busto.
I mean, the term gut punch maybe gets overused in sports. It's a gut punch, especially when it's your money.
Right.
It's not like you're on salary and playing as a pro athlete or something where you're still going to have a paycheck Monday morning. It's your money, and in some cases, maybe somebody else's money if you're backed. So, I mean, the pain is extra difficult. And then to try to get out of holes and the psychology of running bad. And of course, I think you're right. He misplayed the hand there. There's no question about that. I don't think he could have got away from the hand, but he could have lost less probably.
Right. But that's also, too, we're applying a lens 25 years on. The game, it was a lot different back in 1998 than it is now.
I'll say this, though, about the movie. You asked me if this is the best movie or one of the best. It is certainly a memorable movie, and I'd like to maybe share something about it. I think the reason this is such an important film is that it was for a lot of us, I think I was probably, 40 years old at the time or late 30s or something. So, for a lot of us who saw this movie come out, I was living actually in the East Coast at the time. I was playing Atlantic City a lot. And this was validation. This was like a lot of us said, Matt Damon, that's me. Not only the dreaming Matt Damon, but the aspirational Matt Damon who lived and breathed and read all those books and then had the wife or the girlfriend or the family or the mother or the significant others that didn't understand you, that didn't understand your love for the game. This movie, I think, was a very interesting primer for them. Like when I took my wife to see this film, I saw it 3 times, by the way.
Wow.
Really, I mean it. Yeah. I screened it once because, as I said, poker was very important to me. And I saw it the first time. I said, maybe it's not a good movie. Maybe I don't want my wife to see. It was
Sure.
really. I didn't want it to be a bad film or something that showed something really negative. So I actually screened it before, and then I took her to see it. And she, as we're walking on the movie, she said, "I for the first time, I kind of get what your passion is now." I think that's real important because if you don't have your family, your friends, and whatever behind your passions. You don't have your family.
Right.
And that's why this movie was important to me. And I think a lot of people will say something like that.
We're at the point in the film where it's the judge's game, and we get our first introduction to Martin Landau, who I think a lot of people nowadays probably have not a lot of idea about who he is or the impact he had in the film industry. But I mean, that's a big name actor right there.
No kidding. No, I mean, this movie is so stacked. So stacked.
It was on the commentary director, John Dahl said something alluding to poker having its own sort of language. A lot of the words that we use and that we're familiar with to our significant others or to the average Joe, they have no idea what a cutoff or a 3-bet, that sort of vernacular means. And John Dahl made the reference that, the cast of this movie does such a good job of conveying that you don't even have to understand what the words mean. You just get it by the context. And he likened it to like a Shakespearean actor who is speaking Old English. Like you might not understand Old English, but if the right actor is in the right role, you're totally understanding what's going on. So I thought that was a very nice way of putting it. A fun little thing too that we wouldn't see nowadays is you're going to see Mike McDermott just all right, you got a raise here. He's not even playing the game. He's just standing on the side and he goes and he grabs and he's going to raise. 1 player per hand.
Yeah. So funny that big bet's $20. Like,
I think one of the great things about this movie is all the different forms of poker that it shows. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, a game like this, right? You would see something like this, whether it's in a courtroom setting like this or if it's at a university. There's these sort of games that happen. Likewise, throughout the movie later on, we're going to see games at, like the Elks Club and at a golf country club and things like that. It just really seemed to have its fingers on the pulse of the poker industry and the game of poker. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but the movie Rounders was conceived because Brian Koppelman, one of the two screenwriters, lost $750 playing in one of the underground clubs in New York. He said this was in December of 1995, and he immediately called up his friend and fellow screenwriter David Levine and said, "We got to write a movie about this." And that was the genesis of it. And it was almost 2 years to the day that they started filming it. And it was only a 45-day shoot, this movie. They filmed it really quickly. And to just go from the genesis, the conception, to writing it, to bringing it to life, it was...
that is remarkable.
Yeah.
And also that scene we just saw, they were playing 7-card stud. That's another thing that... if you're of a certain age and you remember the East Coast,
right?
Atlantic City was, and this is in New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, areas that's where I really cut my teeth in poker. It was all 7-card stud. You walk in the Taj Mahal on a Saturday night, 95% of the tables are 7-card stud. They hadn't heard of holdem until really, the moneymaker effect. So seeing those old guys there playing 7-card stud, I think they got that right. That's a subtle thing that they got really right here.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that attention to detail. And here we're introduced to one of the few female characters in the film, Gretchen Mol, who plays the love interest of Mike McDermott. There's been a lot of criticism over the years of Rounders in regards to, the female characters. And the lack thereof, or the lack of depth that they have in the film. I do know that originally Neve Campbell, I think, was offered this role, but she turned it down, and it ultimately went to Gretchen Mol here.
I'm curious about the film, and I don't think this movie gets made today because, again, as you mentioned, there are going to be females that are going to be written into the script, and they won't just be, how do I say this, window dressing here. Yeah. I mean, certainly poker has changed anyway, but the very fact that the only women we see are just, again, props. It says a lot. I think that's the reason that a lot of men like this movie, and a lot of, we were talking about this earlier, Jesse. Mm-hmm. I think you said your wife didn't care for the movie, or
no, right. She didn't. No, of course, first time she saw it was, I think, a year ago, 2022, and for her, just the way it played out. Like, for me, it's a movie that has so much history, and I watch it it's like a Christmas sweater for me. Like, I put it on, like, all the memories. Like, I mean every little turn and twist of this movie I know so well. But she watches it, she's like, "What? That makes no sense. God, why would they do that?" I'm like, okay, just please stop talking.
John, what about you? I know that you've got a significant other. Has she seen this movie?
Yeah, she actually kind of likes it, but she's not into poker at all. Not as much as I do, but she does enjoy it. I think she does kind of enjoy it. But yeah.
Closer, John, like an inch away.
Get up in there, John.
But yeah, I think most people. I actually looked up the Rotten Tomatoes score on this the other day to see what it gets, and it's only like 64%.
That's right,
and it makes sense because there's probably, my guess is, people who don't play poker, most people who don't play poker probably don't understand this movie, and it goes back to like what I said earlier. When I first saw it, before I started playing poker, I didn't enjoy it either. So
yeah, I did look that up too, and you're right, 64% on the tomato meter. 87% audience score, though, which I think is encouraging. And I'm also a big IMDb guy, and it got a 7.3 out of 10, which is pretty solid.
That's not bad.
And anything over 7 on IMDb seems to be pretty good.
What's the highest IMDb poker-related film? Do you know?
I mean, I don't
Molly's
offhand.
Game, probably.
Excuse me?
Probably Molly's Game.
Yeah,
I'd have to
Molly's
look it
Game
up.
is probably up there.
Probably is Molly's
I
Game.
mean, I can certainly look too.
What's the all-time #1 on IMDb? Is it Wizard of Oz or something like that?
Probably something like that.
Yeah.
And I would say among gambling movies, the Hustler is going to be probably a 9. I don't know. It's going to be up there. No one who doesn't like The Hustler. You know, I mean, that's going to be almost a perfect film.
Let's see. Molly's Game on IMDb is rated a smooth 7. So
Really? Okay.
Rounders just a
Smooth
little
7.
higher.
There we go.
What about
Playing a
Mrs.
low ball, huh?
My favorite character in the movie has just been introduced. Worm has made his way into the movie. Man,
I'm sorry, it wasn't a smooth 7. It's 7.4. So it does edge
Slightly
out.
higher.
Yeah, just slightly. A smooth 7 is what I rated Molly's Game for the record. Now, Nolan, I know you had the opportunity to, years ago, sit down with the late, great Doyle Brunson to talk about his favorite Western movies. Did you ever venture into the poker category at all?
It's funny, when I think I've interviewed Doyle probably as much as anyone, you know, at least 10, 15 times. And one of the reasons that I did the Western thing with him is 2 parts. Long story short is, I said, Doyle, would you give us your 10 favorite Westerns? He said, I can't just do 10. He has an encyclopedic knowledge about Westerns. So he comes up, I'm not making this up, 50 Westerns. 50. Yeah. I said, Doyle, we can't do a show on 50 Westerns. And he was just no notes, just remembering all these different Westerns. And so we did this. And I think he liked that project. You know why, Chad? Because he's been asked so much about poker.
Right. And he wanted something different.
And one of the things we were going to do, unfortunately, he obviously passed away. He wanted to do war movies next. We were going to do war movies. And Doyle said, I can only do, it's going to be 50 war movies. Of course, they've got 100 war movies, you know, however many. So
I was shocked, but pleasantly surprised by his #1 on that list. I don't know, John or Jesse, were you guys familiar with what he said on the Western front?
Do not recall.
No. So you would have think it would be an old school one, but it wasn't. I was
shocked.
Yeah, Hell or High Water. With Chris Pine and Ben Foster that came out.
I was really surprised.
In 2018-ish, give or take.
Yeah.
Which is a great film. Jeff Bridges as well. So, and then, of course, Doyle himself was in at least one poker movie. He had Lucky You, at least a cameo in Lucky You. So, we only
By the way, Savage is still getting checks, royalty checks on that? It's like 15, 20 years later?
I would assume Johnny Chan's getting some for this.
Do you think so?
Gotta be.
I'll ask him. I'm going to reach out to him and see. So. Like Jesse said, we were just recently introduced to the character Worm, played by Edward Norton. He was a really late addition to the film when it came to casting. I think he was 2 weeks from getting the script, agreeing, and then being on set.
This green Jeep Cherokee, that was my first car. Yeah. No, not kidding. I mean, that model, everything. That was my very first car.
I think you still have that car, don't you, Jesse?
I wish I did. My God. I wish.
One of the great things about Worm, in my opinion, is we all know a worm, right? Or we've at least seen them around the poker world.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't like Matt Damon's being cast in this role. That's one of my problems with the film. I think Ed Norton is perfectly cast. I can't imagine anyone else playing this character except him. Do you agree?
I agree with that in terms of Edward Norton.
Right.
Who would you replace him with then?
Yeah,
Matt Damon. I'll get to that in a moment, but I have a question about Ed Norton.
Sure.
So who was going to play him prior to Ed Norton being... do you know?
I don't.
I can't imagine anyone else.
Yeah, I don't know if there was somebody. Were there?
No, that was Mark Ruffalo.
Ruffalo?
Oh, really? He would have been good too.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo was in the running for it. Edward Norton, they didn't think they could get him.
Right, I didn't know
he
that.
Was too big. He had just made Primal Fear.
Oh, yeah.
Primal Fear in 95,
he was on
96.
fire at that time, yeah.
Yeah.
And my answer on Damon, here's the problem I have. I think he's just... I just don't buy him as a New York City poker player. I'm sorry. The guy looks like he's from the Midwest and just doesn't have that gritty toughness that I know a lot of players from New York, and I've never seen anybody who looks like Matt Damon. Maybe it's just my own biases. I just don't buy him as being authentic. I think everybody else, Knish is authentic, Teddy KGB, even with the accent's authentic. Obviously, Ed Norton is authentic. I'm not buying it, nor I never bought him as a New Yorker or as a professional poker player. I'm sorry.
So they're casting him as like a lawyer type, though.
True.
I mean, you're not trying to cast him as like some blue collar guy.
Fair enough.
I mean, we've got Mike McDermott's. We got Jason Kuhn kind of fits that bill. The good looking.
That's a good point. You know what? With that
Foxen.
comment there, you actually bent me a little bit because you're right. Poker's changing, and I think I have an old school.
Sure.
The new school is the Matt Damon character. I think you bent me a little bit with that comment. Very well done.
And to John, did you say who you would replace him with, or is there anybody that jumps to mind? Especially in this era, we're talking 1999. So a lot of 90s movie stars. I don't even know.
I guess I'm big on character actors. I never really liked Matt Damon as an actor. I know he's made some decent films. I've seen most of them. They're pretty good movies. I never just thought he had acting chops.
Sure.
Everybody else in this film, I think, has wicked talent. Just, they could play almost anything. Matt Damon plays Matt Damon every movie. Am I wrong? Has Matt Damon ever not played Matt Damon?
It's a weird thing for, you're not wrong in my opinion, because I have the same kind of view. I don't dislike Matt Damon. I think everything he's in, I'm like, I like him, but for whatever reason, I don't love him. I don't have it in me to, he just, like you said, he's Matt Damon. It's always Matt Damon when you're on the screen. Right now, I see Worm. I don't see Edward Norton.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well said. I did escort Matt Damon to the bathroom one time.
Okay, well, we've got to hear this story.
At the World Series of Poker, he was being mobbed at the, this was Danny of Africa 2007-ish.
Yes, I remember.
He could not walk the hallways, and he needed to go. He wasn't looking for anything, and I said, Matt, come on. And I was working the series, and everybody wants an autograph and a picture, and he doesn't want to be rude. So if you have somebody with you, I was the asshole. You know what I mean?
It's a lifesaver right there.
Yeah, it is a lifesaver for him.
So what was your real life experience with him like? Or did you find him nice?
He was very pleasant. Tobey Maguire at the World Series, a lot of conversations with him. Same situation, just we obviously, the big thing was, and you guys have dealt with celebrities, all of you, you want them to feel welcome. Mm-hmm. You don't want that. The reason they're playing is not to be a star. They want to be a regular guy or lady if they're a female. Yeah. They want to fit in. They want to be one of the guys and not be treated special. And I think that it was incumbent upon us if we do these kinds of you want to provide that if you can. Oh, and Adam Sandler. I mean, there were several others that year. It's funny stuff.
Yeah,
I kind of missed that where we had the celebrities at the WSOP. We don't really see too many of them. We had like Kevin Pollak was about it this year. That's all we had. I think that's about it.
We do miss the celebrities.
Ray Romano used to show up. Yeah, all those guys.
Pollak loves poker though, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he loves it. Yes, he's actually pretty good. He's actually not bad.
It was funny. I just rewatched a movie from the 90s that he was in along with Jennifer Tilly, who of course loves poker as well. It was House Arrest, kind of a Disney-ish movie. We're not talking about
House Arrest tonight. We're not talking.
We'll do a rewatch of House Arrest at some point.
That's different time.
If this is a success.
I'll definitely be there for that.
Is that Mystery Science Theater?
Yeah, it's absolute hot garbage. It's no.
It was. I took a few notes when I watched the director's commentary. So it was. They had two different commentaries on the DVD. That's right here. There was one with the director John Dahl and the screenwriters David Levian and Brian Koppelman and Edward Norton. Matt Damon wasn't available, unfortunately, but that was interesting. And they had you could tell by what they talked about and referenced. They recorded the commentary on the DVD at least 5 years after the movie was out because they were talking about the poker boom and Chris Moneymaker having won.
That's cool.
So it was interesting to get their perspective, half a decade removed.
I love these blue bloods getting ripped out. This is so good.
I was reminiscing about the poker table. That poker table that they're showing on screen right now is like the first poker table I ever played on in our home game.
What do you mean? You mean that shape? That octagon?
Like the octagon with the wooden
with
rail
the leather and stuff.
Yeah, and with the little pockets, if you will, where the chips go.
Honestly, when I rewatch this movie, one of the things I always forget about is how cheating is actually part of the game. Like, we're lucky. We're in Las Vegas. We play in rooms where you don't usually have to worry about, that kind of stuff. But God, go backwards 20, 30 years, Like in home games, I mean, this is like it's crazy how cheating is such a big part of the game. And I just, I probably lost a lot of money in different opportunities over the years, not realizing that kind of stuff.
And I remember writing for Card Player at the time when this came out, and Mike Sexton and I were always very good friends, and we were really close. And he called me, or I called him, and said, "What did you think?" He hated this film.
Wow.
And you know why he hated it?
I bet I know. Because it's kind of romanticizing the cheating element.
That's
of it,
exactly
right?
why.
Yeah.
He said it made you have to look out everywhere. They're all cheating you, and they did in the casino scene, and we'll see in a minute at the Taj Mahal, where they're ganging up on the conventioneers. Yeah. Mike hated that. He said that's really bad for the game. It's going to scare away people. Well, it didn't, but yeah,
right. I can see the concern because we're watching a scene here where they're colluding and cheating, and they're the heroes of the movie, if you will, or at least Mike McDermott is.
Nolan, were you involved in the underground poker scene back then at all?
No, not in New York. There was something in Washington. Russell Rosenblum played in the game with Ken Adams at the Watergate, and I mean, these were all. Every city has this, especially before casinos are everywhere. There was an underground everywhere. I know a lot of Ohio people. People in Ohio are going to know about this, and obviously in Florida, and every big city had an underground circuit.
Well, especially in 1998 when this came out, there was Atlantic City and Vegas. That was
basically it. Maybe and Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods. That's it.
Yeah. And now you just see the spread of gaming all over the country.
Right. Like in Iowa, I mean, I'm sure there were games. Plenty of them.
Just because
he quit
just
poker.
I'm never gonna cheat again.
How many times have you quit poker in your life? I've probably quit poker 40 times.
I've quit multiple times in the same day.
Have you quit poker more or quit drinking more, Chad?
Gosh, that's a good question. Probably poker. Probably poker.
I don't think I've ever quit poker.
I have. There's been times where I have had a losing session, and you go home and you think, I'm never doing this again. Why would I do it? But then I get a good night's sleep, and I wake up and I have a burning desire to get back and all right, I'm ready. I'm going to go redeem myself, if you will. So.
There are hotlines for that,
I know, right? It's ironic. I was telling people back home in Wisconsin on my most recent visit, I've played less poker since moving to Vegas last year. I've played less poker this past year than I have in the last 20 years.
Why is that?
I think it's a couple things. Like you talked early on when we were doing this commentary about that desire, that passion, that excitement when you're about to sit down with a bunch of chips. That's definitely faded a bit over the years. I still do enjoy playing, but not on the level that I used to. I'm 40 years old now. Back in my mid-20s, I was playing 60 hours a week at my local card room. And the other, I think, is just I can have it anytime I want, 24/7. And so when it's there available whenever you want it, you just kind of take it for granted and maybe don't do it as much. So.
And you've had success. I mean, you have a gold bracelet. Really? You have success. So the tournaments still give you a rush, I assume.
Yeah, a little bit. I like to play. I'll probably play a tournament this week. There's one in town here and stuff. So it's still there. It's just not as much. So we have the second really prominent female character in the movie, Petra, played by Famke Janssen. I'm sure I butchered that name a little bit, but I know her from the X-Men movies. She went on to play Jean Grey in those, and she's really a good actress, and that's shown in this movie too, I think. So
I had the great pleasure in 2006. I was with PokerStars. We were in New York. Scott Byron, I think, escorted us to one of these, stakeout. Anyway, I met the the lady that was. I forgot her name. If she's listening, she's going to send me an email. but a lot of the people, these characters are based on real people, and they really, they resemble these characters. It's a fact. They did a good job, Brian and David.
Yeah.
So I was reading some old interviews, and I heard that Worm is actually not based on a real character. Worm is a character they developed for something. They just didn't know what they wanted to do with him. And as they were considering, what was Levine doing? He was when he wasn't doing screenwriting. He wasn't a lawyer. He was doing something else, and they just got together and poker came about. This is the perfect atmosphere. Let's put Worm into this world. And but yeah, it seems like almost every other character besides our hero and our Worm are like people who are really in the story.
I know just based on having listened to the commentary with the director and the screenwriters that Teddy KGB is based off a real player who was Eddie KGB and a real Russian player in the underground scene. So yeah, that he was based off a real life one.
And by the way, who has not gone through this scenario, coming home from a poker game too late, and where have you been? And it doesn't matter if you won or lost. If you throw $30,000 in the bed and say, "Look what I won," it doesn't change the argument.
Man.
Have we all been there, gentlemen, and probably some ladies too?
Yeah, it's. I think that's one of the reasons this is universally loved by poker players, is because of all these universal experiences that every poker player's had is captured here on the film. Mm-hmm. Even here, 25 years later, there's still a lot of themes, elements, scenarios that are applicable to poker these days.
Oof.
Yeah, that crack pocket in my pocket, it's not mine.
God.
I have a little bit in common with Mike McDermott. And during this film, him and his girlfriend here they're going to law school together. And he's going to law school and the poker's starting to get in the way. Like, I went to law school in New Orleans at Tulane. Yeah. And inevitably spent too much time at the poker table down there and, ultimately didn't finish. And here I am still in the poker world. So,
yeah.
The equivalent of this scene today, where she goes in the bathroom and finds his money, basically today it's go into the bathroom, find your partner's phone, and watching like their vlog that they filmed. Like you had your phone step, watched your cards. Oh, I knew you were there. That's the 2023 version,
right?
Chad, you were at Tulane. Were you actually a student when this movie came out?
No, I was at Tulane in 2007, so almost a decade after.
Right.
I was trying to think of when John asked the question about when I first watched Rounders. I don't remember the first time I actually saw it. What I do remember is back then, me and my friends would play poker, but we usually would play 5-card draw. But around 2002, going into 2003, it was before the moneymaker boom, but after Varconi won. Between Varconi's ESPN broadcast, which my cousin had taped on a VHS tape, and between the Rounders VHS tape, which we have in front of us, we pieced together how to play No Limit Hold'em, right? Like they had the little description early on that I mentioned. So that's my first memory of Rounders, was it being responsible for teaching us how to play No Limit Hold'em.
What a perfectly written character and a perfect delivery of everything with Joey. If you say Joey Knish, every single poker player knows who that character is, and he's probably in this film 7 minutes,
right?
But his character is that profound because he personifies the difference in outlook. No, he has no idea. He has no interest in the glory, or he has no ego. He's all about the money. Remember that? He's going to say this later on. It's all about the money, right?
He's the cash game player. He's not chasing tournament scores.
Right.
He's grinding out the living.
He doesn't want people to know his name.
Right.
Who's the Joey Knish of poker today?
I mean, we wouldn't know them because he's probably playing cash games.
It's funny. I remember David Oppenheim. I thought he was that kind of a Chip Reese. You could go say back. These guys didn't care about bracelets or trophies or being on TV. I mean, I'm stretching it a little bit.
Edward Norton's line there, I'm sure you're just talking about pierogies and snow and shit, was improvised. And that was one of the things they really harped on in the commentary was Edward Norton apparently was quite the improviser in this film. And more often than not, it added to it. It improved upon what was actually written. So,
wow. Do you see Joey Knish around Las Vegas in poker rooms? I mean, those kind of characters?
I mean, not really. But then again, I play like 2-5, so...
Well, that's probably what Joey Knish would be playing.
Joey Knish would be playing, that's true.
He's never going to go broke.
I think a guy's like an Eric Baldwin, if you know Eric Basebaldi.
Yeah.
He's got a family that he's supporting. He's out there grinding literally every day in Vegas, and he's not taking unnecessary shots. He's not chasing the glory. Just the epitome of a grinder. One of the other fun parts about this scene that we're about to see, where Mike McDermott has got Worm to take a break from the table. They're out on the street. You're going to see Worm buy a hot dog here at the hot dog stand. And Edward Norton was saying in the commentary how much he regretted this decision, because he actually told the directors, hey, can I do something aside from just standing here? Like, I'll walk over and buy some food or something. Because in movies, they do multiple takes. And I think he said he ended up eating 17 hot dogs that day when doing this scene.
How hilarious.
He said
should have got Joey Chestnut to play that then.
But that hot dog stand, it gives you a sense that you're in New York. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that you got to have something like that.
Yeah.
Now, New York is less and less like that today, if you know what I mean. But it's so corporatized. But
and apparently, I didn't see it there because I was conversing here. But I did read that if you catch it at the right time, right there at the hot dog vendor, the one on the side of it or the machine says Knish, because it does say something about Knish driving a truck or doing vending or something like that. So I think that's a little Easter egg in the film.
What's the Easter egg? I just want to make sure I understand. That's like the Alfred Hitchcock coming on as a cameo kind of a thing?
Yeah, just kind of like a little special.
Subtle plants.
Yeah, subtle plant that only certain people would understand for
like
whatever reason.
If you're just scanning, you might see like, hey, what's that? And it was planned there. You think it fits in, but it was...
Kind of like at the beginning when they put the Doyle Brunson book there.
Yeah.
We know that that's there, so it's like an Easter egg, a surprise for those who know what it is. So in addition to the commentary with the director, the screenwriters, and Edward Norton, they had a secondary commentary track with 4 poker pros. And this was filmed, again, after the movie was out by about 5 years or more. And any of you 3 want to take a guess as to who those poker pros might have been?
I mean, we're going to have to guess Hellmuth.
Hellmuth was 1.
Well, I mean, we can guess Moneymaker.
Moneymaker was 2.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How many people total?
4.
Okay.
What
year was it?
All Negreanu would be my guess.
All WSOP main event champs.
Oh,
so not Negreanu.
Ferguson.
I mean, okay.
Ferguson was one of them.
Oh, shit.
Good. That was the one I didn't think you would get. The four should be obvious.
Johnny?
Yeah, Johnny Chan.
Yeah, okay.
So it was the 4 of them. It was after Moneymaker 1, but before the 2004 WSOP. And I only know that because they were alluding to the fact that, you've played one and you've won one. So it was filmed sometime in 2003. It wasn't very interesting, to be honest with you. It was a lot of Phil Hellmuth talking. Surprise, surprise. Chris Ferguson barely said anything, which I'm sure a lot of people are very happy about. And, Johnny Chan actually did say a few interesting things, but it was a lot of Hellmuth and then Moneymaker, an early Moneymaker. But still, if you're a hardcore poker fan and you can get your hands on the DVD, you can definitely check that out.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
And we talked a little bit, too, about Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. This film was 2 thumbs up by Siskel and Ebert, which, again, I think is a little bit of a dated reference to a lot of people who might be newer to the game. But, Nolan, that was a big deal back in the day if a movie got 2 thumbs up by Siskel and Ebert.
They rarely agreed about anything. They were rivals with the Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Tribune. And I think some of it was juiced, their conflicts. But you're right, when they agreed on a movie, it was usually a movie you better go see. And they both, I don't think they both loved it, but I think they both gave it thumbs up.
Right.
And that's where thumbs up comes from. Yeah. I love this speech.
Yeah. Oh, of course. It's such a classic.
The speech being, why do you still think of poker as gambling? I've had this conversation with family members 100 times. Yes.
I felt alive at a card table.
Wrong person to say that to.
Yeah, right? Your significant other. And then she calls him out on it, too. Yeah. But I think we all can relate to that a little bit, too. I mean, I certainly have. When you sit down at the card table sometimes, especially back in the day, that passion, that excitement. So Billy's Topless, if you're watching along, this scene is taking place in a topless bar, which is a real place.
Really?
It was. It inevitably got shut down. I mean, not surprise.
Did you do some research?
Yes. I tried to come prepared here. Not in-person research, unfortunately, but.
Oh, here we go.
Grandma, the introduction of another one of the quote-unquote villains of the film. And one of these lines coming up was improvised. I was thinking, you were thinking, that's big. The that's big was added by Edward Norton. And that's what sparks a little fight there.
I don't know how this compares, but I grew up in Houston. I played in a lot of underground games in Houston. I was starting to play, and one of my favorite games that I only went to once, my wife is going to hear this probably, was a strip club poker game. There was a men's club that would host a free poker game. It was the dumbest shit ever, and all my friends would go.
It sounds like the greatest stuff ever. I wish I could go.
I mean, it was in Houston. I think I don't know, but God, I remember I finally went one time. I was like, okay, this is a.
Now, Nolan, Rounders, the movie, you touched upon it a little bit earlier. In the grand scheme of things, and the whole poker boom, like this took place 5 years before Moneymaker 1. It was a half a decade before, but do you think this movie contributed to the poker boom and that whole what happened in the mid-2000s, even though it really came out in 1998?
I think most people would answer that question yes. I would say no.
Okay.
And the reason was, I think there was such high expectations that, first of all, when you look at this cast, oh my gosh, look at, these are all some of the hottest young, well, even some legends, this is not, just a throwaway film. I think the expectations were quite high when it came out. And I think it was I call it a cult classic.
Yes.
And I don't like that word, but it basically meant that the 2 or 3 million people that went to see it to the theater and saw it there and then bought the DVD or the video, they loved it. But I don't think it had the penetration that, say, ESPN showing the World Series of Poker and then all the online thing that came afterward, and that penetrates all over the world. Mm-hmm. This was, again, I called it validation. If you were in poker already, you love this film, or you saw validation in these characters, and you said, "That's me." But I don't think it. For some of the things we've already discussed here, those people that we know that were not in the poker world did not appreciate this film for the most part. They didn't rush out and say, "Oh, I can't wait to go play poker at Mohegan Sun," or "I'm going to run in and I'm going to sign up at a tournament at the Bicycle Club in Los Angeles." It didn't happen.
Right.
The numbers didn't spike. I was working for Card Player at the time. The numbers did not go up. Even in the World Series, the numbers did not go up. I think the data is irrefutable.
I got the numbers right here. We look at 97, Stu Unger's third year, 312. 98, Scotty Wynn's year, 350. 1999, no furlong, 393. Then it jumps up in 2000 to 512. Yeah, no, the main event attendance did not skyrocket from this.
That's not always the bellwether, but a lot of people think it is. But you don't see you didn't see card rooms expanding. That was the thing.
Yeah.
After when you saw the poker boom, every casino in this city and elsewhere had a poker room all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That didn't happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's actually the reverse. I think this movie became more popular because of the poker boom. Wow. Not the other way around. In fact, weren't the box office numbers pretty atrocious?
I actually have them here.
They were horrible, weren't they?
Yeah, so the budget was estimated at $12 million. Opening weekend for the film had about $8.5 million, and overall worldwide gross was just shy of $23 million.
Okay, so
in what time frame is that?
There was another big movie that came out around the same weekend, wasn't there, if I recall? And it just absolutely crushed it, if I'm not mistaken.
You are right, and I'm trying to think of what they said that they were up against, because they did reference that in the commentary.
Did Titanic come out in 97?
That was the year before, in 97. It might come to me here, but they did end up going up against another movie that was just
this is really embarrassing now, because I should know this and I don't. A big factor is when in the calendar year is a film released. The serious movies are released in the fall around Christmas time. One of the reasons is Oscar buzz.
Right.
All the blockbusters and kiddie movies are in the summer, and then the really kind of trash movies are in the spring. That's a fact.
Yeah,
pretty much
that's a fact. And especially back then with Miramax, which of course Harvey Weinstein But back then, they were winning Academy Awards. Shakespeare in Love was a Miramax film. I don't know any, off the top of my head, I can't think of any others. But like you were alluding to, that was very deliberate when they would release movies or when they wouldn't release movies. It still happens today. There was a movie that was slated to be released this year in the fall, but they realized, they're up against some stiff competition. They want Academy consideration, so they're going to push it to next year.
Right. But I could be wrong about this. I probably need to look it up. But I think it may have been released early in the year, meaning the spring.
For this movie?
Yes.
Well, no, we're celebrating the 25th anniversary.
Oh, is it September?
Yeah, September 11th was when it made its U.S. debut.
September 11th, really? That date? No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's your box office for September 1998. Number one was Rush Hour.
That's what it was. Rush Hour is what they alluded to.
$65 million. And then there's something about Mary, Blade, Saving Private
Wait a minute. There's
Ryan.
something about Mary. That's a huge.
Yeah, that was
a huge.
that came out,
it was rated R, rated R comedy,
out,
which is hard.
But that came out in. Wait, hold on. It came out in July,
but it was still probably a big hit. Yeah, because back then too, especially 25 years ago, movies stayed in theaters a lot longer than they do nowadays. Nowadays it's usually like a month between when they're done at the theater run and until they're on DVD or Blu-ray or streaming. Right. Whereas back then it was a good 3 or 4 months before it would go from theater to some sort of home entertainment option.
But this movie has to compete with the schools starting back, colleges starting back, NFL football season starting that week, right? Summer's over. Are people going to go? I'm going to guess that's not a good weekend for movies, probably until October, November.
Mm-hmm. And they did certain things to try to promote it, right? So it was famously...
I don't remember commercials. Did they have commercials?
I don't know about commercials, but I know one thing that they tried to do was drum up some excitement within the poker community by having Matt Damon and Edward Norton play in the 1998 World Series of Poker main event, which would have been many months before the movie was actually out, right? So the main event back then took place, in May? In May 1998, thereabouts, whereas this movie didn't come out till September. But they entered them. I actually wrote it down because they had a little on the little extra on the DVD when they entered into the main event that year. Just you had said the numbers. I can't remember what it was, the size of the field that year in 1998, 350-ish. But Matt Damon was entry number 165, and Edward Norton was right on his tail at 166. So they jumped in. And it's pretty well known, and they actually had a little video of it, which was pretty cool on the DVD extra. Doyle Brunson busted Matt Damon about 6 hours into the tournament. Matt Damon got it in with kings, and Doyle Brunson had the aces, and they held up.
Yeah, wild. I've seen photos of them next to each other. It's so cool.
And that was the year that the main event was starting to outgrow, not the main event, but the entire World Series was starting to outgrow the horseshoe because they had to convert the valet parking area. If I don't know if people remember this, yeah. That valet parking area where it's no longer there, but you pulled in, and they actually took they somehow constructed a makeshift extra poker room, and the poker room was for live action, and then the tournament room where Matt Damon and Doyle Brunson and Ed Norton, they were actually technically sitting out in the valet parking. That's where it was that year. Yeah,
I had no idea.
All right, I've got the exact numbers now.
Sure.
The exact numbers. So this came out September 11th, and it made, like you said, $8 million that first weekend. The very next weekend, when you're trying to, okay, let's build on it, Rush Hour premieres. September 18th. Rush Hour goes on to gross $141 million.
Yeah, huge movie.
Just completely crushing Rounders' Ain't Chance. Yeah. So Rounders crawls to 20 million or 22 million total gross. 20 of that was all in the same month of September. So only 2 million came after. I mean, it was just it was dead in the water.
Yeah. I think John was right in that I think the poker boom did more for Rounders than vice versa.
Yeah.
It was once the poker boom hit, I think a lot of people probably thought, I remember seeing this poker movie, or isn't there this poker movie out there? And then went back and watched Rounders and appreciated it for a lot more than what it was at the time. And no one, like you said, you might not like the word, but it was a cult classic, and it's been deemed as such. And from what I understand, the video sales on VHS or DVD were pretty good compared to maybe more successful on those platforms, relatively speaking, than in the actual theater, even though it did nearly double its budget.
I really love this scene that's coming up, and again, everyone that You can probably live anywhere and get this, but for those of us who lived on the East Coast at the time, here we go. This is where Ed Norton gives a speech. And they've just broken up, and he says, let's go play poker in Atlantic City. And I remember, for all of us who used to actually have 9-to-5 jobs, from Washington, it was about a 3 or 4 hour drive. From Philadelphia, it was an hour. From New York City, it was 2.5 hours south. Every single big city in the East Coast, everybody would flood into the Taj Mahal, the Tropicana, Resorts International, the Sands. Harrah's and I think Caesars were smaller rooms at the time, but everybody would walk into these rooms and see each other. Hey, how was your week? Good to see you again. And everybody in that town knew each other who was a poker player. So I watch this scene right here when I see the Taj Mahal. I get goosebumps. It is so there. It was $2 to park. $2 to park at the Taj Garage. Hated the Taj Mahal. For obvious reasons.
But did you hate it back then?
Yes. And you could walk right next door. If you were not running bad, you just go straight over to Resorts International out the side door, and you were there in 45 seconds. Yeah, it was heaven.
Phil Hellmuth and Johnny Chan both referenced these escalators in their commentary, saying it brought back such good memories and the tournaments that used to take place here. You know, right here, you have Worm saying to Mike McDermott, I got some needs I got to attend to. I'll catch up with you. Yeah. So one of the few, maybe 2 moments of the entire film where sex is even referenced or is a little bit of the plot storyline. You really don't see many of those tones and elements in Rounders.
There's Tony Marino.
Yeah.
I mean, these are real people. These are real. Those are not actors. There's Tony Marino again.
It makes a lot of sense what you just said, Nolan, too, because I thought when I watched this, like, wow, here's Joey Knish, you have Petra, you have other regulars that are all here. They could have just stayed back in New York and played. But it makes more sense what you just laid out, like back in those days, Atlantic City was a destination for a lot of people on the weekends.
And tourists would come in. And behind them there, you see the race sheets. There was no sports betting at the time in Atlantic City. So there was actually the race alcove was right there behind the poker room is right there. So you'd hear screaming, and because it was the racetracks over there, yeah.
That's a famous actor there in seat 1. I think his name is Josh Mastel, something like that. He's been in a lot of films. And you're going to see here as Mike McDermott describes how they're fleecing these tourists, you're going to see cameos by the 2 screenwriters, Brian Koppelman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And David Levine.
Oh, yeah. You know, I went on the East Coast road trip for Poker News a few months ago with Matt Hansen, and we got to meet, what's his name? Vinny Allange at Borgata. And he told me a story about this dealer who worked for him all night and then went and filmed this.
Filmed this?
Yeah. Nice. So this dealer worked a full, like I think basically a double.
And she even gets a speaking line coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
It was really special.
Oh, that's right. She says, don't touch the...
Yeah, you got to buy your chips for
right, yeah.
So there in the mustache was David Levine, and here smoking the cigarette is Brian Koppelman.
Wow.
The 2 little cameos
kidding.
Of the screenwriters.
See, I've seen this movie many times. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nice catch. Yeah, they're the fake mustache.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, here you'll see your dealer speaking line.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because Atlantic City certainly doesn't have the allure as it once did.
Man.
It used to be the only gaming option on the East Coast. Then, as Nolan alluded to, you had Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods eventually open up. But now you have gaming all over. You have it in New York State, in Pennsylvania. There's just so many options. And I think Atlantic City really suffered in that regard.
Did you hear her shuffle? Her cut? It was so perfect. She's obviously such a skilled dealer. Like that. I mean, I love this. Like, she's not an actress. No, you found someone who had years of experience. Like the way she was doing that. I mean, it's just so cool to see those details.
And based on what you just said, Chad, you're right that the fact that there's casinos everywhere now, all the people that I saw in Atlantic City 25 years ago, I'm still friends with probably 30 or 40 of them. I'm not making it up, really. I'm still friends. If I would not have had that, if we didn't all have to go to Atlantic City every weekend or wherever people go, I wouldn't know those people. And my life would be different. I'm not sure I'd be in poker. Yeah. So that camaraderie was important. This whole scene where people all talk to each other, it's not just a movie. It's life. That's the way it really is.
No, I've never made it to Atlantic City, but now sitting there watching this, I'm leaving for Philadelphia tomorrow morning.
It's just a quick train ride.
I know. It's making me.
It's easy. I've done it many times from Philly to AC.
It's $16 or something. It's
one thing that was also shared in the commentary, the players' commentary. Johnny Chan and Phil Hellmuth were talking about this noodle bar that they're eating at right now. This was a real place inside the Taj Mahal, but apparently you couldn't just walk in there and buy something. Like you and I couldn't just walk in there and eat. You had to have casino comps. It was strictly for players who had casino comps. Interesting. And it was apparently really good, according to Johnny Chan.
I think it was upstairs. And it was kind of like this secret thing. If you were an insider, you knew about this place.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
And Worm does say, "Hey, I got some comps I got to use up." So.
And again, I like that they don't dummy down the conversation.
Right.
You know, it's authentic.
Mm-hmm.
I like a scene like this. I think really adds a lot to the film. I talked about it a little bit earlier about my experience juggling poker in law school, and I think a lot of people who have been enthralled with poker will say have juggled that aspect of maybe not law school, but juggling poker life and real life, and being late for a meeting or being late for work, or we've seen coming in late at night and having to explain yourself to a significant other. Now, he should have done what I did when I attended Tulane. I skipped a lot of classes so I could go downtown and play at Harrah's New Orleans. But I would bring my law books and actually study at the table. And I became known for that.
Really?
Yeah, down there. Like I was the guy who was studying law while playing poker. So let me ask you guys on a little fun fact that I learned on the commentary. I don't expect anybody would get it. Nolan might have the best chance of this, but while filming this movie, Edward Norton and Matt Damon didn't have a lot of experience with each other beforehand, but they became quick friends, and it was due in large part because they would recite lines to one another and quote a movie that they both loved, that they both claimed to be like the biggest fan of. And ultimately, they decided that they were both equally good and loved the movie equally. Do you know what that movie was? I'll give you a hint. It starred Robert De Niro as one of the leads.
Good Lord.
It was, we'll say,
give us another hint.
It was like a kind of it wasn't a buddy cop movie per se, but it was like a kind of that theme, like a buddy movie type of thing. I guess comedy, probably.
A Robert De Niro comedy that came out before 98.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
I have a guess, but I can I give it? Or
yeah.
Midnight Run?
That was. Yeah. It was Midnight Run.
With Charles Grodin.
Yep. With Charles Grodin and Robert
because it was a buddy movie.
I've seen that. They apparently were both huge fans of this movie, and they all knew they both knew all the lines, and they would test each other, in between scenes.
No kidding.
And that really helped bond them. I actually seen that Midnight Run for the first time within the last 5 years. It was one of those movies that just kept popping up on my radar.
Really
and I'm like,
good film.
Let me watch this. So, and Matt Damon in the film just got dumped. You guys have all had, long-term relationships that poker hasn't ruined, seemingly at least.
True story.
And we talked about that earlier.
Oh, here we go.
And that's Jack McClellan, right?
That's right.
Jack McClellan. So we're seeing the ESPN actual footage. They had to license this of Johnny Chan beating Eric Seidel heads up in the 1988 World Series of Poker main event. One of the most famous poker hands in the history of the game. Johnny Chan flopped the nuts.
Oops.
Eric Seidel shoves on him. Chan wins it back to back. Jess, you actually have this video. You have the old VHS tapes of the World Series of Poker.
I do.
You have that
There's
somewhere.
four Hall of Famers in that scene.
Right.
McClellan, Seidel, Eric Drake is in there.
Yeah,
Oh, he was
Johnny Chan.
nice. Yeah.
And McClellan.
And as they alluded to in the commentary, and Bobby Baldwin.
Yeah.
Bobby
No,
Baldwin.
Bobby
There we
Baldwin
go.
make it 5.
I don't recognize Baldwin without the visor, though.
They said in the commentary that they almost didn't get that footage because they needed Eric Seidel to sign off on it. And he ultimately did, but Eric Seidel was the holdup on that.
What was his hesitation?
They didn't explain. I don't know.
Come on. It makes him out to be a horrible poker player.
Maybe,
I mean, there's no context.
I didn't. Yeah,
All you get to see is Johnny Chan.
He looks
outplayed him.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't want that to be the way you're known for, in a Hollywood movie. And I mean, what did this do for Seidel's career? I mean, of course he's a very wonderful, amazing poker player, but this is
and wasn't Seidel, he was one of the kind of holdouts or one of the players who was most reserved about when the whole card cam
that's
came
good.
out.
It's true.
And a little fun fact about Eric Seidel, he makes a cameo appearance in one of my favorite TV shows, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
I think it was season 7. I don't know the episode offhand, but he had won some sort of charity auction with the prize being a cameo. So he is as an extra, he's in the background of a restaurant scene eating. Well, Larry David has his scene, but you can see him very clearly, very prominently. So if you're a fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm, you can Google it to find the exact episode. But he's there. I've seen it. I thought it was really cool. So should be worth noting too. I did reach out to David Levine and Brian Koppelman to see if I could talk to them, maybe get them involved in this. Unfortunately, the timing couldn't be worse. It's the 25th anniversary of Rounders, yes. There's also a writer's strike in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And as part of that union, they're not allowed to speak to the media. And so, unfortunately,
and they've been kind of busy the last 25 years.
yeah.
Talk about turning something into just a stellar. I mean,
so you know what they did immediately after? Well, not immediately after Rounders, but when the poker boom happened, they did that ESPN show called Tilt with Michael Madsen. I don't know if John, did you see that?
Yes, I watched it every week. It was quite cheesy, but it was good in a weird way.
Yeah, I agree with
description.
you. Yeah, cheesy, but I certainly enjoyed it, and I like Michael Madsen a lot. And then of course they did Runner, which was a poker movie with Justin Timberlake and Ben Affleck that came out several years ago. Anthony Mackie was in that one as well. But more recently, they've struck gold with Billions, a TV show on Showtime, which is in its final season right now. But that was a big success for them, and they've actually incorporated lots of elements of poker into that. There's a charity poker game in there, and they had Kevin Pollak on there. They had John Malkovich in a role that essentially is Teddy KGB. It's a Russian oligarch kind of guy and same kind of accent, but they. I think they based it off him. I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah, my writing partner, Peter Olson's wife, Alice, she wrote a couple of episodes for.
And Peter Olson had a cameo as a poker dealer in one episode.
Yeah.
And if you stay tuned to the end of this podcast, I will share with you a little secret about what their next poker project's going to be.
Ooh, nice.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you now.
This is the inside.
You have to wait.
You got to stay to the end.
Like 50 more minutes. Stay till the end. John's looking at me like, you don't know anything. Yeah,
I want to know it.
I'll tell you.
I'm thinking the story I'm going to write here.
I should have brought this up earlier, but this will be a good little quiz for you guys too. I'll ask you each for an answer, and we'll see who can get it. The character of Worm, of course, here played by Edward Norton. On the commentary, Johnny Chan was talking about him and said that Worm reminded him of a particular poker player. Who is that poker player?
Yikes.
Who said that? Johnny Chan?
Johnny Chan, yeah. The character of Worm reminded him.
Basically, you're asking us to call someone out as a cheater.
Not necessarily.
Aliam Surovich? No. Oh, I said that out loud. I'm sorry. I'm assuming from the 80s, 90s, right?
I mean, yeah.
It's not
Jesse,
Stewie.
you want to take
it's
a
definitely
guess?
not Stewie.
I do not.
Definitely not
Well,
Stewie.
I'll just say it was Stewie.
It was
That's
Stewie.
what he said. I don't think he was getting it to the cheating aspect. I don't think that was it at all. I think it was just more.
This line.
What's the line?
Whatever do that guy? You fucked his mother. Yeah, but she's a good-looking older woman. That line is what made Edward Norton agree to make this movie.
Yeah.
He said yes. He said
Really?
he said he made lots of movies based on one single line in the script, and I couldn't remember when this line was, but that exact line, he read it. He's like, okay, I'll make this movie, because he was a big deal. He was, and he's like, yeah, that line's so good. You're giving it to me? Yeah, I'll make this movie.
Huh.
Nolan, you knew Stu Unger personally. You wrote the book on Stu Unger with the aforementioned Peter Olson. Do you see any similarities between Worm and Stewie?
I understand what Johnny Chen was trying to get at. Basically, the recklessness, does not live for tomorrow. There's no such word in his vocabulary as tomorrow. All the money that he has in his pocket's going to be burned out today. I understand the similarities. It's funny when you ask me that question. I should know the answer to Stu Unger, but I almost don't want to go on record because somebody says, you know what Nolan Dallas said? I was going to say Lane Flack. I thought Lane Flack was always nothing bad about Lane, but again, a similar kind of a personality, especially when he was I want to say out of control, but just kind of reckless. And that's what made him great in some ways.
Yeah.
But I understand what Jenny was saying there.
And speaking of the character of Worm, Hellmuth did quip in their commentary. He says, I'll tell you one thing, I don't have any friends like Worm. That's kind of tracks with how Hellmuth is now, too. He's got the most upstanding friends or the big names.
I disagree. I think anybody in poker, if you're in this game, you've got friends like Worm.
Yes.
I mean,
some of us will say we're the Worm.
I can say who his friend is like Worm. My God.
Mike Matusow.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Mike Matusow is like Hellmuth's best friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know enough people if you don't know a Worm in this,
True story.
So another interesting fact that I learned was Edward Norton said he wanted Worm to be based off of two people he had in mind when he was playing this character. In terms of clothes, and if you look at his wardrobe throughout the film, he was going for Keith Richards.
Yeah.
In terms of attitude, I thought this was pretty interesting, but this was straight from Edward Norton, Bugs Bunny. So he was going for a blend of Keith Richards meets Bugs Bunny in a poker context.
Wow.
Oh.
Nolan, can I top you off? What people don't know is I brought a very special birthday bourbon from Old Forester to celebrate the birthday, 25th birthday of Rounders. So we're having a drink and a movie.
Thank you. It's so wonderful. And I've learned, it's funny, this is the wonderful thing about, poker, gambling, and camaraderie. I've been around this game a little bit. I've read a few books and done some stuff. I learned about 5 or 6 things sitting here. It's really, I didn't know some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And the night is young.
Now, Grandma here, I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but he ended up going on to star in another movie with Edward Norton, Death to Smoochie, which I've seen 20 years ago, but I don't remember. It was Robin Williams in that one, right?
So good. It's like the Barney character.
This film is so politically incorrect. You notice that the bad characters are accented and darker skinned people. Mm-hmm. All the heroes are white, white red guys. Now, I don't think this movie gets women or marginalized. This movie doesn't get made today.
It definitely would have to be. If it did get made, there'd have to be certain tweaks to it for sure, big time. He fucking hit a dog right there. That's not going to be happening.
It was off camera.
I mean, you heard the squeal, but I don't like that.
No. Pete is on the line. Yep.
And it's funny you say, like, they're the bad guys. Apparently, John Malkovich has said, like, why am I the bad guy in this? Teddy KGB, why am I the bad guy? He pays them his money. He doesn't cheat them. He just, he's just playing poker, but he's painted as the villain.
He's like, I didn't cheat. I'm not Worm with the aces. I got dealt aces.
Yeah, and you're right. He does the honorable thing, as we'll see at the end. That's a good.
Right?
Yeah.
And
he's got muscle guys working for him. Maybe that's it.
Right. Yeah, it's clear he's some sort of, Russian gangster in the movie. But now we've all been around the poker world a lot in the last couple decades or since Rounders came out. We hear all sorts of lines quoted from the movie, but is there anything that sticks out for you guys that you particular hear a lot or you think is more said more often than not?
Always. Pay that man his money. That's the one I hear.
That's the number one.
That's your number one? No, that's not my number one. John, is that your number one?
Yeah, that you hear the most? Yeah.
For me,
okay. Yeah. As a married guy,
in the game. Yeah,
women are the rake, and that's a sexist remark. But every guy who's or could be the other way around. Your life, and it's really means your life is the rake. Yeah, is the rake on your game and your
That's the one that jumped to mind for me.
The women are the rake.
Yeah, women in the game of life, women are the rake. But pay that man his money is certainly a big one.
I can't remember the quote now, but the other one I always remember was just the description of Knish, that early one about how he just grinds out his money. Oh, you're the way he described him. That I always remember too.
No, I think the line I get chills when he's going to say it here later. He goes, "I play," and I can't do the voice. I love John Turturro.
Oh yeah,
I play for money. I play for money. I just love that lecture and that 4 words. Boom.
Actually, the Mirage. That's probably the most. Like,
oh yeah,
Vegas and the fucking Mirage.
Yeah.
Now, this scene here is they're going to be hitting a bunch of different games. They're trying to raise the money so they can pay back Grandma, who's, of course, partnered with Teddy KGB. One of the things that the director, John Dahl, said that he was really happy about was that they filmed this in New York City. This movie was almost all filmed in New York City, a little bit in New Jersey, but a lot of the extras that you see in these games are authentic New Yorkers. Yeah. Whereas if you try to go to Canada or something... And apparently that guy in the blue shirt here that we're seeing smoking a cigar is Bill Camp, a young Bill Camp, who's a famous actor now. He has really caught fire in the last few years. Just one of those kind of character actors. He was in, I believe, True Detective.
Wow.
And a bunch of other stuff. I was really surprised to learn that fact because it's just a very bit role there, but...
I like how poker's integrated into restaurants, bars. There's a lot especially in New York, still to this day, it is tied to ethnic groups. It used to be the Italian clubs. It's the Greeks. New York's a city of ethnicities and immigrants, and so each game would have different characteristics.
The only thing I don't think is realistic in these scenes is that this is so wide open. Like in my experience, at least in Texas, like these games are always, these were played in all these places, but they were in a back room. You had to know somebody. Like you couldn't just walk in and say, "Oh, there's the host stand." No, there's an old couple in the back. No, come on.
And there's what, $15,000, $20,000 on the table, or in the drawer, or whatever it is. Yeah.
To tie real quick, I mentioned Bill Camp with that cameo there. Fast forward to 2017, he was in Molly's Game, another poker movie that we've talked about. He played the role of Harlan Eustace, the guy who loses all his money. And
he was the solid guy, and he goes on tilt.
Yes,
I didn't know that. That's great.
So the same character had a little bit role here in Rounders.
Man.
I don't know if I've heard that many times before. You can't lose what you don't put in the middle. It's old poker wisdom, if you will.
I like the other side of that argument. The move was folding. The move was. In other words, the EV play was.
Right.
Again, only poker players are going to understand that conversation.
Right. Mm-hmm. And which I think speaks to a little bit of, especially at this point in time, 1998, you could actually pick up some poker tips and tricks or improve your poker game by, if you listen to that kind of words of wisdom. And back then, you didn't have as many options to learn poker. So watching movies or watching WSOP on ESPN was a big thing.
And the movies before 98 were just, when they showed poker, was for the most part horrendous.
Yeah.
Just so I have to credit this film for being
realistic.
Pretty much,
Yeah, Maverick. Oh my gosh.
Right. I still love Maverick. That'd be a good watch along.
It's a great movie, but
4 of a kind, straight flush, royal flush, right?
Come on, yeah.
In a 5-card draw game.
Apparently, in this scene that we're just watching right now, we have Edward Norton and Matt Damon getting clean shaven, straight edge, razored shaves. I did say in the commentary, apparently the whatever cream they were using caused Matt Damon to have a really bad rash.
You really came with the facts, Mr.
Hey, I've got my note card. I wrote down a bunch. You can learn a lot when you dive in. See, you can kind of see it right there on the side of his face.
Did you interview with the director?
No, so we are attempting to reach out to him. We would love to, but as of recording this, no, we haven't yet. So This is interesting. They drove 5 hours to get to this game. They pull in the parking lot, and it's all cop cars.
Or you did say civil workers or something. I forgot the term.
Municipal
workers. Thank you. Yeah.
Now, there's a couple things here on the table. If anybody can see it, we've got the VHS, we've got the Blu-ray, we got the DVD, we got some books here. I got the official script, which I thought was fun to find. The official script of the movie. They actually did a novelization of the movie, which is down here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, because there were some interesting deviations that are in that book that aren't on the screen when it comes to terms of the ending. So.
And that one right there, that's the one of the guy claiming they stole it.
So
right?
John's pointing to the book Dirty Dealing, which came out last year, 2022, where the author of that book alleges that the screenplay, or not the screenplay per se, the idea of this movie was stolen, if you will, was ripped off by Miramax Films. There was a big lawsuit, Harvey Weinstein and all that jazz. Still working on reading that, but once I do, I'm going to do a book review for Poker News on that one. So,
what was the outcome of the lawsuit?
From what I'm not there. I'm still reading it.
The book is about his.
It's about. But I do know that the case itself has set a precedent that it really changed the industry, if you will. So.
Rewatching this now, one of the things I love that sticks out of this table is the kind of bottom left corner. Now on the right is from Dexter, one of the main characters in the cast of Dexter. But in this scene, you don't see him at all anymore. From now on, the camera's basically on his shoulders. It's this cast is it's just so fun.
It is fun to watch older movies, and now, like we say, we're 25 years removed, and a lot of these actors have went on to different roles or success. I can't pinpoint them because I never watched The Sopranos, but I know that a lot of these characters that were in this movie went on to have roles in The Sopranos too.
I like do you remember earlier in this movie where the tourists sit down at the Taj Mahal and the pros are all looking at each other, but they can't look at each other and snicker or whatever, but they kind of just shifty eyes look at each other. And you notice Matt Damon comes in and all these cops are looking. It's a 2040 game. That's a fairly big game in 1990. That's not a you could win or lose $3,000 or $4,000 in a game like that. And he sits down and you see all the cops hey, here's the live one, right? They have no idea that, not only is he a better player, these guys are cheating.
Yep.
I see a lot of Andrew Roble in Mike McDermott. Do you guys?
I could see that. Yeah, that's another good player to like into it.
Maybe even a little bit of JRB. A little bit.
I don't see that one. I think you're off there.
No. Well, just the whole private game scene right now, where you got to kind of play a role a little bit to get in the games. If you're actually a skilled player, you got to kind of put on a show, like he's doing. He's trying to put on a little show, to get in the games and stay in the games.
So we're watching the scene right now where Worm is going to get busted cheating. He's dealing a 7-card stud by the looks of it. Oh, no, this isn't. There's one more hand. This is the one where he deals Mike McDermott rolled up kings. And Mike says, nope, I'm just going to fold these. These are way too obvious of a spot, maybe. And Worm is none too pleased.
He's not subtle about any of it. Not subtle about the kings. He's not subtle about being angry.
But ultimately, if you've seen this movie before, and again, we're not too worried about spoilers. We assume if you're tuning in, you've watched this movie sometime within the last 25 years. This is ultimately the game where Worm gets caught cheating, dealing off the bottom of the deck. And one of the things I really liked about this scene, and it should serve as an example of what to do if you suspect foul play in a game that you're playing in, is you're going to see the police sergeant that's seated to the right of Worm. He's going to be observing him. He's really tuned in. He's watching for it to happen. And as soon as he sees it happen, he's going to stop the game. He's going to reach over and he's going to grab Worm's arm and says, "Give me the deck." And I think if you're in a game where you suspect there's cheating that's happening, you got to catch them in the act. You instead of waiting. And I think it's just a good example of call it out when you see it.
course, it helps that he's a police officer.
Right? Yeah.
You know?
Now, ideally, too, if you're playing in a game, it's not going to be a game where the players are dealing their own cards. But in home games or a lot of games like this, in bar leagues or at Elks clubs, things like that, it is the player's deal. It's another famous line in this movie, I caught a hanger here, Sarge.
Yeah.
And of course, the 7 did help him, gave him 3 of a kind. The evidence is mounting against them. And then the nail in the coffin, the ace of spades on the bottom of the deck, which of course would have given Mike McDermott a full house. And now Worm.
Aren't you supposed to read us our rights?
Yeah, aren't you supposed to read us our rights?
That's your right.
Just punches them with a right.
Are we going to be seeing protests for police brutality here?
I mean, they deserved it though, right?
They did deserve it. And every gambling movie seems to have a scene like this. The hustler, Paul Newman. Now, Paul Newman was not cheating, but he hustles and he gets beat up and they break his hand. Do you remember that?
Yep.
I mean, there's always going to be a scene like this in every gambling movie where the hero is down and out and now he has to make the comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Now they are flat broke. They had been raising the money that they were going to pay back to get out of the trouble that they're in, but they just got caught cheating, and now all their money is gone. And this is the point in the film where Worm suggests they run.
You should play those kings. That's the best.
And I think it tracks, it's Worm suggests they run. What does he have to lose, right? He's lost everything.
Wait, what do you mean run? You mean run away?
Because otherwise they're going to get killed by Teddy KGB and Grandma. Whereas Mike has, more to lose. He's got a law school life and career, and he's on the up and up. And I'm pretty sure when I say this is going to be the last we see of Worm in the movie.
Yeah.
Because he probably does run.
I like this. I like this exchange.
I think that's kind of like Worm calling him out here because we see Worm as the blatant cheat here, but Mike McDermott's got to take some responsibility. He's partaking in it. He might not be the one executing it, but he's the beneficiary.
He's part of the colluding, and also just because the guy's in law school doesn't mean he's anywhere respectable,
right?
And
and staking, talking about staking to work off the debt. Still see that a lot in the poker world, right? Makeup and people being staked. There's a lot of themes that we see in this film that are still relevant today, 25 years later. So here's another fun quiz as we watch this scene. We know Johnny Chan is in this movie. We've seen it, and it really was a boost to his career. I think his kids wanted to see him in it, which is why he agreed to do it. But do you know which poker player was originally supposed to be there according to the first script?
Ooh.
John, you look like you wanted to rip that one off.
No, but...
You want to take a guess at it?
It's definitely not Hellmuth. Who would it be?
Maybe Doyle, since they had the book. Well, they shot that at the end, though.
Nolan, you want to take a guess at it?
I did. Again, this is the seventh thing I didn't know about this movie. No, I don't know.
Well, originally it was Phil Hellmuth.
Oh,
Phil Hellmuth was the original.
See, I would never guess Hellmuth because when
he would have been
Phil
more
Hellmuth turned down something like that,
more insufferable than he is.
Man,
don't listen to him, Phil. We love you.
It's funny. I'm reading a little bit of the trivia here, Nolan. This harkens back upon what you said about Matt Damon and the believability. It says here that the late critics Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert both loved the film, but Siskel, who was a professional card player himself, called out the film's reliance on Matt Damon's character's tells, which he felt weren't that believable in settings such as this. So it sounds like he took issue a little bit with Matt Damon too in this role.
Well, just to be able to make that, even if you don't agree with the commentary then in and of itself is thought-provoking enough to give him some credibility on this very question. That's very, very good. Here's another good speech, because everybody who's been in gambling around has probably owed money at least at some point in their career. And if you haven't, congratulations. But making this humble speech like, I can't pay you, that's a tough speech to make. And he's doing the right thing here.
Right. And you almost feel Grandma is relating to him, wants to give him a chance, but just can't.
You can't beat an honest man, or whatever the term is, So is he give him another 24 hours or something?
Yeah, he basically gives him another day, or you can take it up with Teddy KGB, who, of course, John Malkovich, and is Grandma's partner here. So apparently this, we're seeing the scene right now where Mike McDermott is going into some sort of spa to find Joey Knish. He's going to ask him to borrow some money. Apparently this spa was a real place, but was more of a whorehouse, and eventually got shut down for such activities. Jesse, you've been there.
No, I haven't.
I just wanted to include you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after these commercial.
Jesse's favorite whorehouse. Blah, 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 blah. Great.
It'd be a hell of a run to spend $500 into $15,000, which is what they would need here. And that's what Joey Knish just offered.
What would you guys do in this spot? Like, you are owing Grandma on KGB $15K and you got nothing. You got a day.
I'd first borrow that $500 and just try to go win some flips. Type of thing.
Oh yeah, take it. I would just go play some blackjack, right? Just put it all in one hand. I mean, honestly,
I'd probably max out what I could.
What do you have to lose?
And then run.
How much time do we have, John?
A day.
A day. I guess a GoFundMe.
Yeah,
so nowadays, there was no GoFundMe in 1998.
I guess I'd pull up a bullshit GoFundMe. I'm sorry.
Taking notes here.
That's right.
Wow. It's always hard. He's asking Joey Knish for money. He's being very heartfelt, and it's never easy to ask for money and then to get denied like he is right now by Joey Knish, saying you've done this to yourself.
Yeah.
And Knish responding, alimony, child support. He's playing for money. So where does it rank for you guys being in the poker world as well as we have? Like, what Joey Knish just described is great, but also, there's never going to be any glory there. Does that matter?
No.
I guess it comes to the individual, right? I don't know.
I think you're asking the wrong crowd, and I'll tell you why. Yeah. Because all of us have been in front of an audience, so to speak, as writers, or you do broadcasting or what have you. So we kind of get that thrill anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, with all due respect, if you win a couple of bracelets, it's not going to change anything.
Right?
They're still going to know Chad. They're going to know John. They're going to know Jesse, and they're going to know Nolan. Whatever. So I think we already get that high from not being known. That's the wrong word. But there's a certain fulfillment in doing what we've done for many years, writing about the game, following the game, learning, talking to the greatest players ever to play the game. There's a great fulfillment in that. It's intoxicating. And in a way, it's much better than winning a tournament. Maybe you get, I don't want to say you get lucky, but
absolutely,
it's not quite the same. There's a great privilege that we've had to sit in these seats that we've sat in over the years and interviewed these people and communicated. And I'm not in the poker game like I used to be, but I still read all your guys' stuff. And I'll see John on Facebook and I'll see his column and something will catch a headline. I got to say this. I get that rush from reading vicariously through you guys. And does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think I'd trade what I do though to win the main event though, to be honest.
Yeah, everyone wants to say bucks, but I'm just saying that not the fame is the same, but you are in front of the camera.
Well, this, of course, on screen right now is the famous Johnny Chan cameo. Matt Damon's character, Mike McDermott, explaining to Kanish when he went and played against Johnny Chan and bluffed him. Johnny Chan apparently did this because his kids encouraged him to. He was not too happy on the player commentary. He thought the camera made him look bloated, a little too big. But
come on, Johnny.
It's the way it works sometimes, I guess.
Did he have a pinky ring? I don't think he ever wore a pinky ring. Did you notice he had one there? And of course, the pinky ring has a diamond in it.
Yeah,
I don't think that.
Hellmuth did allude to, and they talked a little bit about Johnny Chan here. Mike McDermott, said that Johnny Chan asked him, did you have it? And he says, I don't remember, John. Phil Hellmuth said, I've played with Johnny Chan for many years, and he's never asked to. That's not something Johnny Chan does. It was just
of course. It's also limit. You would never let your hand go in that spot.
But that scene with Johnny Chan, I feel like that for amateurs who watch this movie, who start to love poker because of this, and with I watched this around 2003, 2004. For me, it drove me to want to watch more poker, and for me to want to play, for me to find places for my first trip to Vegas. All the kind of stuff to have that experience of God, what if? I remember the first time I played in a circuit event, it was like a $300 buy-in, and I was just dreaming, what if I could play with, name a famous player who would never ever be there, and then Alan Cunningham's there. I'm like, oh my God, wow, what an amazing pro is at this $300 buy-in, and it's just hilarious. But that scene for me was something that made me fall even more. It was romanticized this movie.
I'm going to reach out to Johnny Chan to hopefully talk to him. And a question I want to know, and I'm sure he's talked about a little bit in the past, though, is what did this movie do for him in terms of being recognized, or you have to imagine that this movie, when the poker boom happened, all of a sudden people knew who Johnny Chan was because of this movie, not because they saw him win the main event in 1987 and 88 and then finish second to Phil Hellmuth in 1989, even though a great accomplishment, back-to-back Johnny Chan, the master. But, rounders, he's just become so synonymous with it.
This scene is beautiful because, in fact, one of the best scenes, because Martin Landau, the professor, he sees himself, in Matt Damon, and essentially Landau took the straight and narrow path, and he doesn't have regrets, but he also recognizes that I could have gone that other direction, and he sees that here's my opportunity to help somebody and pursue their dream, and he decides to. This is the last guy you'd think that would law professor.
No joke. Yeah.
But I think it's so credible. I think it's so good because Martin Landau just delivers this perfect, compassionate, a generous love, almost like it's his son.
Now, Martin Landau in this movie is near the end of his career. Nolan, do you know, you're a cinephile, like I said, and you know a lot more earlier movies than anybody else at this table. What do you know Martin Landau from, outside
Twilight Zones, the Star Treks and stuff. He did some great, with Woody Allen, he's done some just extraordinary films, but he was never a lead actor, always a kind of that secondary character actor. But it just, everything he did, he delivered.
Right. And I certainly can relate to what you just described about Martin Landau. Took the path of being on the straight and narrow, and now he sees this chance to help out otherwise. Like I described earlier, when I went to law school at Tulane and I dropped out, was not taking the straight and narrow path. And I have since, in the years, I would have graduated in 2010, and here we are 13 years later. I have had people I went to law school with who kind of live vicariously a little bit through me, or like my adventures, if you will, and wonder what that kind of life would be like, as opposed to that straight and narrow life. So, and I think that's why so many of us, so many poker players, so many people listening to this, people involved in the poker industry, have chosen that path or want to go down that path a little bit further. We're not 9 to 5 people. None of us at this table are 9 to 5 people, except for Jesse now. He is working 9 to 5.
I guess.
So what do you do here? You owe 15,000. You have 10. They're not cutting you any slack. You still got 8 hours to come up with it. You're going to put it on the line like Mike McDermott here and, literally be playing for your life?
No, I'm going back to the blackjack table. For sure.
Yeah.
I've done some reckless things in my life gambling. I think most serious gamblers have. There's nothing, though, like getting a ton of bricks off your shoulders, on debts and things like that. There's no way that I would. And it's not about getting beat up or whatever the thing was. It's just there is a high in saying, God, I've got that monkey off my shoulder now. I paid that guy off. I'd pay it. I would not do what he's doing.
It reminds me a little bit of, I remember the first time I was stuck $1,000 playing poker, and I clawed my way back to even, and just breaking even in that scenario felt like the biggest win in the world.
Yep.
It felt more rewarding to me than actually winning.
Yeah.
So we are hitting the climax of the film, Mike McDermott versus Teddy KGB. Heads up.
I love that soccer is on the TV. You notice that? I love that they have that on there in the back.
I can't remember. I wish this just jogged my memory. It wasn't something I was prepared for here, but I remember reading somewhere somebody went back and pinpointed exactly what game that was. And it took a lot of research and whatnot to do it, but
that's somebody who has too much time on their hands.
Right. I'm looking at the chips there. That's what, $6,000 in front of Teddy KGB. He's got less than 2,000 back by the looks of it. And we're going to have another Oreo moment. Now watch. If the tell is he doesn't have a good hand, he doesn't eat. If he eats it, that means he's got a good hand. I used to think it would mean the cream was on one side or the other. But
the tell doesn't matter now. He's already all in, right?
No, it doesn't matter.
Mike McDermott's went all in. Teddy KGB is debating what to do.
Teddy's tell doesn't matter. McDermott's tell matters.
But he just picked up that information because he did not eat it.
Yeah, good point.
And that's going to come into play here in just a little bit.
I see.
Are you guys familiar with Mythbusters?
Yes.
Adam Savage. Have you guys heard about what he's got when it comes to render stuff?
I don't know if these guys do.
No.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
He's come out with 2 pieces of content, 2 videos about his Rounders collection. So
he
first
loves
thing
the
is,
movie.
Yeah, he loves it so much. I mean, it's crazy. He has a chipset of the chips from this movie that he had someone create for him.
Custom made
bears. Everything is perfect. And then in 2020, during COVID, he made a video teaching you how to make the exact table that Teddy KGB has.
Is this oval or round, this table? It was kind of roundish.
It's
it was
round.
kind of strange.
Round,
yeah, round with the leather.
Real quick on the term rounders, I never liked that whole term. It's now taken on a vernacular all its own. But say in '98 when this came out, they said, "Oh, that's what they used to call." You grew up in Texas, Jesse. Yeah. I never heard the term rounders when I was. That wasn't. I don't know. It was a strange thing to call a New York-based poker movie round. I never understood that. I'm not knocking it now because it now has in its own meaning.
Sure.
But I never understood that term. I wonder maybe the round table.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
It's interesting. Right now, you had Mike McDermott beat Teddy KGB. He has enough money to pay it off, and you're going to have Teddy KGB needle him a little bit to kind of goad him back into a rematch. Jesse, I read, and I thought of you when I saw this, the inspiration for this scene by the screenwriters was Back to the Future.
I was just about to say that.
My
chicken.
Yeah.
You call me chicken?
What are you guys talking about?
Right here in this scene.
Needling him. He's goading him into playing him again. And he's
basically Mike McDermott here is Marty McFly.
Yeah.
And KGB is
Biff.
Biff, yeah, saying,
yeah.
"Why, you're chicken, yellow belly?"
Chicken?
Like, bullshit.
Nobody calls me chicken.
Right.
But yeah, that was their inspiration. I know you're a big Back
That's
to the
funny.
Future fan, so.
Oh, that's
And you
one of the
picked it up.
greatest movies ever. Probably watch that more than I have Rounders, actually, to be honest.
This last time I stick it in you. That's the one that my friends have certainly said in a home game a time or two. You know, he just said it's not about pride or ego, it's about money. But in this scene, it is about ego a little bit.
It kind of reminds me of a few years ago when Polk kind of goaded Negreanu into playing him.
Yeah, I can see that. Except for in that analogy, then
yeah, well,
Negreanu
except for in that
Mike
analogy,
McDermott.
it's like reverse. Yeah.
But here's what I don't understand. If you're short this money and you're going to, talk about EV, expected value, it's just a plus or negative on that. Teddy KGB, whatever you want to think of this character, he's not a bad player. It's
Right.
not as though this guy is some sucker. So I don't understand, like, if you got one shot, why are you playing this guy when you can go play the tourist or whatever the
Yeah, that would be the smart, because he's up like 5,000 more than what he owes. So that's a fresh start on his bankroll. He could go build off that. I think maybe in this scenario, in this movie, in this, what we're seeing, he probably thinks, I've got Teddy KGB a little bit on tilt. I just took him for a bunch, and I just picked up on what I think is one of his tells.
Oh, the tell, and he's got a little bit of emotional tilt.
Yeah, and it's heads up. I'm not going to get this opportunity much in the future, so I still don't approve, and I wouldn't do it. But I could imagine that's maybe what's going through his head. And you see this. This is Ace 3-5 board rainbow, and another cookie scene. And this is really where Mike McDermott realizes he's about to call. Mike McDermott has Ace 5 right now in his hand. He has top 2 pair, and he is going to see Teddy eat the cookie and pull back his, now Mike McDermott's going to pull back his chips. He's thinking better of it. He's picked up on this tell, and he lays it down, and you're going to hear Teddy KGB. Well, you won't hear it, but if you're watching along with us, Teddy KGB, say how can you fold that hand? And realizes that he's been had, that his tell has been picked up by Mike McDermott. That said, I don't see how somebody folds Ace 5 here.
No, you're not even drawing dead to a straight.
Exactly. If he's got a straight, one thing you're drawing dead to again is
pocket aces.
Pocket aces.
Well,
yeah.
you're not even drawing dead. You're
yeah.
running 5s. Well, that's.
Yeah, you'd be in bad shape against a set, but he could easily have Ace King. Anything.
Heads up, top 2 pair.
Yeah.
I mean,
so for
it's an inconceivable fold.
Yeah. For us who are in the know in the poker world, it's how the fuck did you lay that down? And I don't even think we get to see Teddy KGB's cards. It's just implied.
It's implied he has a straight.
Yeah. Or a set or, a better hand. So
he throws the Oreos into the wall.
I wonder why Oreos. I never have heard anything about that or read anything, or if I ever get the chance to interview the screenwriters, I would be curious to know why. Was that based upon?
You think it was
something?
a product placement?
It would be great.
No, I mean,
no. I mean, I can't imagine that Oreos would want to advertise in a poker movie in 1998, but I would imagine it's based upon somebody.
Wait a minute, it's a Miramax film.
And that's true.
Product placement is, I don't know what that's true. But
there was a Pepsi. I noticed some Pepsi cans earlier and stuff too. So that could very well actually be the case. Maybe they had an overall agreement with Miramax for that sort of thing.
I mean, Fig Newtons just don't fit there. Okay,
right. Oh, alligator blood. That's another good saying from The Kid's Got Alligator Blood.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna see.
This is where the arch nemesis is starting to kind of respect each other, though, a little bit. He's respecting his game.
And this is ultimately going to be the final hand, much like we talked about earlier when the Johnny Chan flopped the nut straight against Eric Seidel to win the 1988 WSOP main event. Mike McDermott just flopped the nuts 6, 7, 10. He has 8, 9 in the hole. Now, this is an interesting choice by the the director in the film itself, we know what his cards are for Mike McDermott, but we don't know Teddy KGB's cards. Nor, spoiler alert for you guys watching this right now, they don't show Teddy KGB's cards. We don't ever know what he has in this hand. Deuce of clubs.
So on the river,
turn, it's a brick.
He's going to talk about a flush draw on the river. That doesn't make any sense here. Missed his flush draw, didn't.
There are 2 clubs on board. I can't see right now.
No, there's a rainbow board, right?
Diamonds, right?
No, there's no flush draw.
It looks like a rainbow board, but
I think so. And he's gonna be like,
we're getting into the bad poker etiquette about splashing the pot.
Mm-hmm.
It's his own club, Chad.
But you see Mike McDermott here with the nuts just flatting. I've heard that many times too. Last card coming. And fittingly, it's the ace of spades.
It's funny. I haven't seen this in many, many years. I just assume he has aces again, and he's got 3 aces. And is that...
I mean, I think it's a good assumption, but they don't show it. You know, it would certainly make sense.
What draws would he have missed? Though that's the funny thing here. What did he miss here? Why not?
Another string bet that John drives him nuts, and splashing the pot. You know, that's why he's the villain. He's splashing the pot and he's string betting. He gets it all in, tables the nuts. Son of bitch.
Son of beach.
So Teddy KGB is losing his shit on screen right now. And he's quitting. And this is where we get the line, pay that man his money.
He beat me. He flopped his set straight.
You know, this is, again, it speaks to Teddy KGB is the villain per se, but he's doing the right thing. He's quitting. He's saying he beat me. Just beat me straight up. Pay him his money. What's so funny about that, Jesse?
Pay that man. He's money.
He's money.
God. I mean, Malkovich. He's a god. He's amazing. But woof.
That's one thing about this movie too, as a whole. For the most part, I mentioned it earlier, you don't have a lot of sexual references. Sex isn't a big part of this movie. You don't really have many comedic moments, really. I mean, Worm certainly, I think, has a few, but other than that, it's not, pandering in a comedic way, at least in my estimation. So
yeah, no.
So we just had Mike McDermott beat up Teddy KGB. He's talking about all the money he won in that game. He's paid off all his debts. And he's back to where he started. 3 stacks of high society, $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to take that and play in the World Series of Poker. We'll never find out. We'll never find out how he's going to do.
He's running back into law school. He is reconnecting with his ex-girlfriend. They're going to get back together. It's a happy ending. Right, this is the movie that we're watching, for the most part. Right,
this is where the sex happens.
Well, I can tell you from the novel here. This is the novelization, a novel by Kevin Canty, who wrote the screenplay into a novel, and there are some stark differences between the book ending and the movie ending. For instance, these two never get back together in the book. They're officially broke up. In fact, Mike McDermott ends up with Petra, the character, the Russian woman poker player who is played by Famke Janssen. That's how he ends up in here. And also, it's mentioned he never speaks to Worm or sees Worm again.
Whoa.
That's the differences here in the book. So,
did you say that book was written before or after?
This was written at the same time. It's a movie tie-in. which I didn't know about until I seen it on the bottom of this poster behind me. It said, read the novelization. It's a hard book to find. I got lucky finding a copy at a decent price. But if you ever find this at a thrift store or something, pick it up.
But you guys said something that I didn't catch before. They don't get back together in the movie, right?
No.
They're splitting up, and he's going to Las Vegas.
Okay,
right?
sure. Not back together, but like they had this reconnection,
right?
If you will, or at least a more suitable happy ending.
Right.
Where in the book they never do.
They tied things up.
I like the term "tied up," right? Because you can't just leave it like she dumped him, he dumped her, and it looks kind of like a bad ending. Yeah.
Now, real quick, I want to mention before.
This is one of those. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. We're ending the movie here. I'll do it during the credits.
When he's in the back of the cab, and the cab's like, "So where are you going?" It's like, "I'm going to Vegas." Good luck. I'm like, God, how many of us have had those conversations in Ubers or taxis or anything where it's like, I just don't want to tell you where I'm going. Like, you're going to Horseshoe for what?
All the
Poker,
time.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't want to.
It's a modern day Uber.
Yeah.
I'm going to show this to the camera if they're able to show. Otherwise, I'll be tweeting and stuff too. This is a chip I found from the Palms Casino here in Las Vegas. They did a Rounders themed poker chip, a $5 chip. This was limited to only 2,500 produced. It's pretty hard to find. It took me a while to find this one, but a Rounders collectible that's out there. Gentlemen, we got the credits rolling. We've got just a few more minutes here.
Harvey Weinstein right there, guys.
No, don't say his name.
Let me ask you
rules.
your thoughts here. 25 years removed, watching Rounders. Does this stand the test of time? Is it still a good movie? Jesse, let's start with you.
Absolutely. No, I love this movie. For me, I said I was an amateur, come in at moneymaker time, and I would watch this movie anytime before I go play a big game. Like if I was going to go to a circuit event, if I was going to go on a trip or anything like that, which I did a few times, I watched this movie as like a prepare. Like I watched this on the airplanes, on my little portable DVD player and stuff. Like I have so many great memories of this movie, and I think that I have an emotional attachment to it.
Sure.
So I think that plus with the cast. My answer is yes. It definitely holds up.
How about you, John? How do you feel?
Absolutely. It's one of the 10 or 12 movies that I always make a point to watch at least once or twice every year. It's very nostalgic to me. It's a great movie. I always wondered what it would be like to play. I never played those underground games. I never played that scene, but it makes me want to, though.
Right.
To be honest.
Nolan, how are you feeling about Rounders? You saw it 3 times in theaters 25 years ago. Here you are watching it with us tonight. How do you feel upon this viewing and the conversation we've had about it?
I'm on the edge. I'm really undecided. I think if you're a very serious poker player or aspirationally want to be a poker player, of course you have to watch this film. I don't think it's like an A plus movie. You say I like that. Does it stand the test of time? When I see The Hustler made in '61, that movie 60, 70 years later is still a great film. Cincinnati Kid, for all of it's got only a couple of flaws, really. That is just a masterful film. Everything about that film is just exceptionally strong. That's the best poker movie I think ever made is Cincinnati Kid, Steve McQueen, 1966. It is not there. It is not there as The Gambler, by the way, James Caan, the 73 version, not that horrendous remake. Molly's Game surprised me, by the way. I did not expect. I hated the book, despised it. I loathed that book. I did not expect to like the film. I'll tell you what, I walked out of that film saying that was a fantastic film.
Yeah.
That's a top 5 poker movie, Molly's Game. This is maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range.
Wow.
I still think it's meaningful. It was transformative for me because it happened to hit me at a key moment in my life when I was transitioning out of what I call a real job, working 9 to 5 and immersing myself into poker. I could totally identify with Matt Damon's character. I don't know if players, people in 2023, 24, 25, they look at that quite the same way. There's no online discussion. I mean, it's not their fault, by the way. I'm not knocking it. But can I just throw one back at you, Chad?
Yeah,
before,
please.
And perhaps, I know you're going to answer that, but I'm going to ask you something if we have a minute.
Yeah.
One of the discussions I saw a long time ago was if they make a Rounders 2, what is that plot line supposed to be? It's obviously McDermott going to Las Vegas. What happens to him? I'd like to hear anything along those lines if we can. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's been a lot of rumors and innuendo about a sequel to Rounders over the years. I know in a lot of the talk shows, Edward Norton has hinted at it. Robert De Niro was attached to it at one point in time. As to the premise, I think you would almost have to do some sort of time jump. Let's see what Mike McDermott is up to now. Obviously, he should be in Vegas. Base it here. Let's get a glimpse. Let's get the World Series involved a little bit. I don't want to see something garish like he's won the main event or something, but it could be just a time jump, and he's been a successful poker player, but maybe not too, and maybe some online element to it because the game has changed, with online poker quite a bit. So. Jesse, you had some news you were going to share with us before the end of this.
That's right. I do have a little source that I'll keep unnamed, who told me that basically Koppelman and Levine have been pitched a Rounders 2 script multiple times, and it's one of those things that just doesn't go away. Like there's always people who want it, and they're not saying no because they're just waiting for the perfect story. They just haven't found it yet, so it may never happen because they just may never find it, But yeah, it's not a definite no ever sort of thing. However, they are somewhat building towards some poker content in the foreseeable future. The word on the street is that they are working on a 10-part docu-series that is about the history of poker.
Nice.
Yeah. Of course, we're dealing with the strikes and all this sort of stuff right now, but hopefully that continues. The worst part about these strikes is you just don't know if things will actually build and go, or if they'll just kind of fizzle out as we wait and wait. But hopefully, we love the content these guys have made, especially their poker stuff. Maybe not that Ben Affleck movie, but the most of it I've really enjoyed. So hopefully we get to see that History of Poker docuseries.
All right, well, we are nearing the end here. Before we go, I want to tell a poker joke. It's one I stole from Chris Ferguson. He told it on the commentary, and I thought it was pretty good. What is the difference between a large cheese pizza and a poker player?
I know this.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What is it?
I'll let you tell it. Go ahead.
It's a large cheese pizza can feed a family of 4.
Oh, ha, 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 ha.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this rewatch of Rounders, the 25th anniversary. Jesse Folan, I'm Chad Holloway, John Sofin, Nolan Dalla. Thanks for tuning in, and continue on PokerNews.com for more Rounders content.